Hello, everyone. Welcome in. So many first-time chatters. I hope you're good, guys. I hope you can all see and hear me okay. I say that because anyone that was with me on Twitch earlier in the week will know what a nightmare we had over there. There was a different piece of software that caused a bit of a technical issue, but you know, it just unsettles you when something happens like that. So if you can let me know you can hear me okay in chat, that'd be great. Welcome in Near Cheeks, welcome in Selby. I hope you're good, guys. Welcome in Connie. I'm not sure I've seen you before, Connie, in chat, but if I have, I apologize. My brain sometimes let me down, but if not, welcome in. I hope you're good. Who else have we got in chat, guys? I need to get caught up here. I've never seen so many first-time chatters. It's awesome. Lauren, welcome in. I hope you're good. Suzanne, I hope you're well. Let us know where you're watching from, guys. I'm always interested to know where people are watching us from. It helps us also know what to target and what to work on for future episodes. But I hope you're all good. I hope your weekend has been a fun one. I made a bit of a fatal error this weekend in that we had a community meetup last night, which wasn't the best planning on my part, to have a community meetup that involved going to a gig, standing for hours, having a couple of drinks, and then doing a live show on a Sunday evening. So I've been having to rest a little bit today, guys. I didn't pace myself very well. I hope you, Anita, sorry, I missed you earlier, Anita. I hope you're well. Watching from Germany, awesome. I can't remember last time we had somebody say they were watching from Germany. We're about 50-50 UK and US audience. So guys, if you're watching from anywhere else other than that, like Anita is in Germany, please do let me know, because I find that fascinating. And like I say, it helps us. I do stuff in person as well as what we do here on YouTube on a Sunday night. So it always helps us sort of plan our work. So we had our third community. I think it's technically our third. Some would say 4, but I think the Singapore one was a bit impromptu, but our third sort of official community meetup. So thank you to all the people, especially those that are in chat, that were out with me just 24 hours ago and are still tolerating the sound of my voice on a Sunday evening. I really appreciate it, guys. And if you want to know more about that, guys, we organise all of our in-person meetups over on our Discord. So our Discord serves 2 purposes. It's peer support. It's meant to just be a place of escapism. So there's lots of talk on there about movies, books, music, stuff we do over on Twitch where we play games to escape and distract from pain and some of these long-term health conditions we talk about here on the show. But it's also where we have a support forum. So for people that are looking for peer support or just want to rant at the world of people who also understand and get it, that's cool. We also, it's a bit more comfortable over there in terms of, like, we haven't got to worry about some of the trouble that comes with, like, the likes of Facebook with spam and people promising miracle cures and all this sort of thing. It's a much safer place over in our Discord. So you can join that if that's of interest to you. But it's also where we've started arranging our community meetups, because it just, again, it gives us that bit more of a safe space. I don't really want to be posting my whereabouts on the internet outside of conferences, that is. And we need to keep people safe. So we tend to arrange arrange all of that over on Discord. So if that sounds like something you want to get involved in, please do head over there. And we also I'm trying really hard to do a US stateside meetup this year as well, because our friends such as Lauren in chat have put a lot of pressure on me to do the US side community meetup for the other half of our community. I'm working on it. I'm applying for lots of speaking events over there. As soon as one of those happens and I have a justification to the boss, i.e. Nia Cheeks in chat there, to book flights to America, that will happen, and we will arrange a community meetup off the back of that. Welcome in, Snuffle. I hope you got home safe and well today. Guys, we had 3 people on the community meetup yesterday that done a combined total of 350 miles to join us. That's not getting home. That's 350 miles to join us. 3 people did that, which is amazing. We had people from the Midlands, people from London, people from Suffolk. The meetup was in Norwich. Just awesome. Like that's what we exist for, you know. And my wife is also always the first person to point out when I have a bit of a wobble. Advocacy can be a rough ride sometimes. You take on quite a bit of a burden of others, but also you feel like you're banging your head against the wall with some of the issues, and sometimes it can just feel like you're not getting anywhere. But my wife always points out the fact that we have people who, you know, socialize here on a Sunday night or on Twitch or on Discord or meet up in person, which is just incredible. The fact that happens tells us that we're helping people, and that's my little positive reminder that I make to myself when it doesn't feel like we're getting anywhere. So thank you for everyone that joined us, guys. Thank you for everyone that's come to previous events, and thank you for everyone that's just always here present, including yourself, Sin. Welcome in. I hope you're good. Always a pleasure to see you in chat, mate. I hope you're good. Lots of people from Ireland, Northern Ireland. So we've got Germany, America, UK. I love this, guys. Thank you for sharing. Really do appreciate it. And if you haven't already, because we'll jump into the interview in a second, please do consider hitting the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, follow whatever other platform you're on. It really does help us, but it also helps tell whatever platform that is that you're on, that it might just direct other people to this important conversation and help other people find us. So in a minute, I will be welcoming on our guest, and you will see the chat disappear off screen. The chat will continue. If this is your first time here, guys, these people you see in chat right now, most of them have got a little YouTube badge next to their name. I don't know why I was pointing to that on screen with my cursor. You can't see that. Those people will still be around chatting away, and I will feature the best comments. I'll feature some questions. As you can see, most people are watching on YouTube. So if you want to carry on that conversation, head over to watch us over here on YouTube. Just search for Joel versus Arthritis, Joel vs Arthritis. If you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn, you can still comment and I'll still see it and I can still feature the best ones. But no, you'll only be talking to the people on the platform that you're watching. So if you want to get involved with the conversation throughout the show, then YouTube is the place to do that. Otherwise, I will keep an eye on your comments coming in from elsewhere. We are currently going out live on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And if you miss any part of this, you can't stick around, you miss the start, etc. As soon as we go offline, the entire stream, no matter how many mistakes I make, and if you were watching last week, that can be quite a few when my brain fog's kicking in. They're all up there. You can go watch the whole show back from the start. So I will drop off the chat now. And guys, wish me luck. I've got 2 very unnatural words to pronounce now for this introduction that I've been practicing all afternoon. I'm pretty sure I'm going to butcher it. So wish me luck for the intro. I want to see lots of love and support in the chat if I get this right. If we don't, we'll just edit it out. It's fine. and Barry can tell me exactly how to pronounce it properly. So chat will go off. We will kill the music. There we go. So let me get my screens in order. And like I say, please do keep the chat going, guys. I will still see everything coming in and feature the best ones. So guys, tonight, I'm delighted to be welcoming in a gentleman by the name of Barry McGrath, who's a patient advocate, patient research partner, and co-founder of HS Ireland. And HS, Hidradenitis Suppurativa, or HS for short, is an often overlooked painful long-term skin condition that causes skin abscesses and scarring on the skin. And the exact cause of HS is unknown, but it occurs near hair follicles. I got the hard word right and I got that wrong. The hair follicles which there are where there are sweat glands such as the groin and armpit. Barry, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're well.
Very well, Joel, and you nailed the pronunciation.
Superb.
Uh,
I've never been so sweaty at the start of an interview.
the 23 letters and 10 syllables that comprise hidradenitis suppurativa don't exactly roll off the tongue. We call it HS for short in the community,
Brilliant.
and
And that will
I
be what
think
I
that,
will use for the rest of
yeah,
the
yeah,
show.
sounds like a good plan.
Yeah. And also the Norfolk accent didn't seem to lend itself to them two words either. We add in lots of extra vowels that are not needed. So I'm glad you approve. But welcome in, Barry. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously I've got to know you quite a bit over the last few weeks, but for anyone that isn't aware of what you do you want to give us like a little overview of who you are, where you're from, and then we'll go on from there?
Sure, greetings from the west of Europe. I'm on the west coast of Ireland. I'm a former scientific clinical researcher who, just as I was embarking on my career, I got diagnosed with this long-term condition after about a 20-year delay of looking for answers. That's a common story, unfortunately, with HS, this long diagnostic delay due to poor awareness. So first things first, thank you very much for helping raise awareness and talking about this condition. When I do talk about HS, there's a quote I love to cite, and that's from Oscar Wilde, who wrote in the Picture of Dorian Gray, there's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about. And that has been the case with HS. It's one of the reasons why awareness is so appalling. Um, I, when I was diagnosed, I was working in scientific research. It was all a bit too much. I stepped away from the scientific research, and in one of those completing the circles that so often happens in life, I spend most of my spare time researching and then getting involved in HS awareness, advocacy, education programs, things like that. By day, I'm a writer with a clinical research organization focusing on creating content specifically for patients, converting the technical language into plain language so that everybody can understand it. Really enjoy that because I'm learning all the time about new diseases, new conditions, new medicines in the pipeline. It's real exciting, always learning. In terms of HS, we saw a huge need for someone to do something about HS. And in parallel with many of my colleagues around Europe and internationally, set up a patient organization to work together with researchers, try and increase awareness about this condition, try and improve things because there are many unmet needs with regard to HS. Up until quite recently, there was just one approved medicine for HS, which when it worked or when it works well in some people, but that's the problem. It only works in a small proportion of people, and there's a huge need for more medicines, more awareness of the condition, and so on. So that's me in a nutshell, Joel. Thank you. Thanks again for the introduction and for doing this about HS.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much. There are so many questions here because there's the more I've looked into you, got to know you, Barry, the more levels I've found. And there's so many fascinating things you're working on. And I think I first became aware of HS just for the audience watching, people listening to this back, is we had a really popular interview with Dr. Eleanor Chatburn that was on for World Psoriasis Day. And I was chatting to her on social media and she says, really overlooked condition, and I must admit it completely wasn't on my radar. I've seen a few people talking about it on LinkedIn, some sort of quite prominent people I follow on LinkedIn, but it as a condition itself, it wasn't on my radar. And so I suppose the two questions is
Mhm.
one, is that the case, or is that just my sort of perception? Or and also like do you have any sort of idea why you think that might be?
It is an overlooked condition. With a dear friend and fellow patient in Ireland, Suzanne Maloney, we give healthcare awareness talks. We target healthcare students at third level institutes. And one question we always ask at the start is, how many of you have heard of psoriasis? How many have heard of eczema? How many have heard of HS? And it's usually all or most versus none or very few. Now, the reason we compare and ask about the psoriasis, eczema is that roughly the same number of people are affected. Psoriasis and the psoriasis people like IFPA that we were discussing earlier on
Yeah,
done tremendous work in making people aware of psoriasis and its impact, and so much so that the dog on the street knows about psoriasis at this stage, and
yeah,
that's what we aspire to doing. I mean, the psoriasis community done fantastic work, and they're the icons on the wall that we aspire to, and we want to get that type of recognition. It definitely is overlooked, and one of the reasons why this is the case is, well, I'll break this down to several parts. Because of the terrible shame and embarrassment associated with HS, people with HS tend not to talk about it. It is by and large an invisible illness. We can hide it because of where it affects us in the body. As a result, we can visually hide it, but we also don't talk about it. And that leads to huge psychological problems in coming to terms with having this effectively for life. Because it hasn't been spoken about, and because we haven't really vociferated our needs and whatnot, it's compounded within the medical community. There's poor awareness there. There's a poor awareness of how it impacts people. And can be an absolutely devastating condition in terms of the impacts on a person.
Right.
Physically, a large proportion of people end up disabled or temporarily disabled at some point, but it goes way beyond that psychologically. As with many other chronic conditions, the relentless nature of it can drag you down, and there are huge societal impacts as well. And if there have been approaches before to try and raise awareness, but if you're going to do it, you've got to target each of those areas: the person, the individual affected, the medical community, and society. And you've got to take a multi-pronged approach to make sure that all dots are connected in this. Otherwise, it's not going to work, and it's going to fail.
Yeah, that relates. I can relate to a lot of that as somebody that's got a type of psoriasis that's not like really prominent, or maybe not the type of psoriasis that people associate with psoriasis, and trying to get across that sort of mental burden of having this long-term health condition, and that there isn't any fix, and it's not going to go away. And just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not having an impact on the individual. It sounds like there's a lot of crossover there, and I don't know. It reassures me that you're talking about that collaboration and looking at what other people are doing, because like we've talked about this in the past, but it feels like sometimes we don't lift each other up where we can, and yeah, and I think it's really important what you're trying to do, and sort of that best practice from what's going on elsewhere. And so yeah, thank you for that, and I'm glad we can help sort of raise awareness of it here. Are you okay talking a little bit about your own personal experience with
Of course, yeah,
HS, and
of
maybe
course.
because I'd just be interested to know how it onsets, because
Sure,
I'm in the dark with this. So yeah, I'd
sure,
be interested to know
sure.
what that experience was, and I believe, like, diagnostic delay is a bit of an issue with the condition itself, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. I just started secondary school when it all started for me. I woke up one morning with a pain in my backside, and that pain has persisted in some form or other right up until the current day. That was almost 35 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, at that time, I was 13, 14 years of age. You're used to waking up with all sorts of strange things, and the hope was it would disappear,
Yeah.
go away in a few days. And sure enough, a few days later, a week later, something like that, I was at school one day, and a fella behind me hit me and said, "McGrath, I think you sat in something," because there was a big stain on my trousers. And got out to the bathroom, tried to clean myself up as best as possible, and thought, well, thank goodness that's over. Um,
Yeah.
I'm glad to see the back of that. And so I thought I was over it, and sure enough, it came back. I can't remember exactly when, weeks, days later. What happens is you get this pain, it intensifies, this little lump or lesion develops, and it fills up with pus over time.
Mhm.
This can take anywhere from hours to days to weeks. And eventually you get some relief when the pus or the lesion ruptures and leaks its contents onto your clothing, etc., etc. Then it all happens again. It fills up, releases its contents, you get relief, and sometimes you can go a long time without anything happening. Sometimes it begins filling up straight away. And that cycle repeats. There seems to be no rhyme or reason to it.
Right.
You can't predict when it's going to happen. And it just comes and goes. And you get these painful leaking lumps in various parts of the anatomy. With me, it started in the backside, but there are some classic areas of the body where it happens: the armpits, the breasts, the groin, the genitals, the bum,
Mhm.
the area between the bum and the genitals. Those are the most common, but it can happen more or less anywhere where you've skin. They think it starts with a blockage of the hair follicle, the shaft where the hair begins life and grows and develops over time. And you have those on virtually every surface of your skin, bar the palms of your hand and the soles of your feet. And if you look far and wide enough, you'll see HS on just about every body surface. For the most part, they're in those regions that you can hide from people. But there
Yeah.
are some people who get it on the face, on the scalp, on the jaw, on the neck, in the visible parts of the body. And it can be particularly difficult for those. When it does leak and rupture, it tends to stay in your clothing and stay in
Right.
your bed sheets and the furniture you're sitting on. So this requires us applying dressings to these parts of the body. And
Mhm.
when a big rupture or explosion happens, there's no dressing or anything you can apply that can contain the mess.
Wow.
And it does lead to social embarrassment. It's usually in the most the time you least want it to happen, when you're making a presentation at work. You're in a social setting, you're out with pals,
Yeah.
etc., and a stain will appear in your clothing. And I think everybody I've spoken with who has HS has at least several of those incidents where they were humiliated publicly, or they perceived themselves to be humiliated publicly. And
Yeah.
whatever about the physical side of it, we live in terror of being found out like that. There's a contradiction going on. We can hide it, but we're constantly in fear of being found out. And the pus and stuff that comes out of you, for many people, it can smell horribly.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely foul smell. And well, if you think you smell bad, the natural reaction is, I'm
Yeah.
going to isolate myself from people.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay away from people. And HS, one of the big problems long term is we isolate. And that leads to devastating psychological consequences, loneliness and complete isolation.
Yeah. And whether it's something you perceive, others perceive, it's that if you know it's there, and it's the way it then makes you feel. I'm trying to think about how it is with my like psoriasis. If I get it in areas like my genitals or whatever, um the whole of me feels dirty, or I don't want to go near other people, or I might work from home that day, and then that sort of process of isolation begins. So I can really relate to that. And yeah, and I think it's really important what we're doing, raising awareness of this, because not doing the sort of pain and discomfort any disservice.
Mhm.
The way, that mental burden, I think, is probably the best way to describe it. Is Sounds
Well,
really challenging.
two things, Joel. One, so that people at home or who are listening in might be able to relate to it. If you lose a tooth or have an abscess in your tooth, your tongue automatically goes towards that area, and
Mhm.
you are always aware that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
No one else can see it, but you are, and you're
Yes.
constantly carrying that around with you. And over time, I've been living with this for 3.5 decades. The physical, you, and not to diminish it or minimize it, you develop coping strategies on how to cope with the pain and what you realize your limitations, etc. But it's the psychological burden that I've always struggled most with, coping
Mhm.
with that. And you've a lot going on internally, and we haven't been doing ourselves any favors by not telling friends, family, those in our immediate circle. I mean, I didn't tell anyone for the guts of 25 years beyond
Mhm.
immediate family, or those on a need to know basis. And what I've been speaking openly and publicly about it for the past 10 years. And what I've come to realize is that most people are nice and will want to help if they can, but they can't if they don't know.
Yeah.
And you're caught in that catch 22.
Yeah, and in a weird way, you're also like you're contributing slightly like to the stigma, because if people aren't talking about it, then those people that feel isolated feel like it's only them, or they're doing something wrong, isn't it? So I think it's really important that we share. That's what we're all about here on Sunday nights, is sharing
Mhm.
those experiences. Um, One of the things I want to sort of ask you is, like, obviously this is sort of an overlooked condition, and you said there was only sort of one treatment, and is anyone like primary healthcare, like, is this on their radar? Are they looking for this when if people go into their doctor, with early signs of this, or they might have it in a location? How far away are we from like addressing that, or is that even an issue at all with awareness at sort of primary healthcare?
Well, we have some data. We've been collecting data in our group, and in Ireland, we're similar to the UK. It's a referral system. You go to primary care and they open up the doors to the healthcare system for the specialists. And
Mhm.
about 80% of people in our group have their first conversation. It's in primary care about their HS, and they
Mhm.
describe the symptoms. Unfortunately, in primary care, there's a very poor awareness of it, and they tend to treat it as a one-off thing. They deal with what's there in front of them
Yeah.
then, and they send you packing with a prescription, and you're back again a couple of weeks, couple of months later, and you get caught in that cycle. And once you get into primary care, it can take 7-10 years on average before you finally get that
Wow.
diagnosis. Now, during my diagnostic delay journey, I lived in 3 countries and access to healthcare in all 3 countries. I lived in the UK for a time, access to NHS. I lived in the Netherlands, and I saw beyond primary healthcare, I was referred to specialists, and no one seemed to know what to do with me, and you fall through the cracks of healthcare. And it was finally when I moved to a new city. I was back in Ireland. I moved to a new city. I walked into a GP's office, and he diagnosed me within 2 minutes
Oh wow.
because he was aware of it, because he was knowledgeable. He'd spent some time in surgery, and surgery's part and parcel of treatment for a lot of people with HS. And because he'd had that experience, he was able to diagnose me. Now, it was almost 20 years to get to that point, to meet the right person
Mm.
who was able to do it in 2 minutes. And it was just a couple of questions, and he'd a quick look, and that was it.
Yeah.
And that still sticks in my throat, that how come it took so long to get to that point, to meet the right person? But there's a quote that I read from one of the HS papers a number of years ago. If you don't know about HS, you're not going to be able to diagnose it.
No.
And it's this chicken and egg situation, that because they're not necessarily talking about it in primary care, they see a lot of it, um, but they're, they're not joining the dots, or it hasn't been, no one has been doing it. Now, there are many initiatives happening. I'm privileged to be able to work with a lot of HS specialists, industry people, researchers around the world, and there are many initiatives in the background happening to try and connect all those pieces to get the person to get into primary healthcare. Then when they get to primary healthcare, to make sure that primary healthcare physicians know about HS, and then to get them out to the right specialist. It was this multi-pronged approach that I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier. In my own case, and whatever I tell you about myself, it's reflected and mirrored everywhere we go. It was about 2 years before I plucked up the courage to go into the GP. I was a young guy, 13, 14. It was happening in my backside, and
Mhm.
the thought of going into a doctor's clinic and showing someone my backside was that was an absolute
Yeah.
horror. And again, because it affects the intimate areas of the body, it tends to kick in teenage years, early 20s, and you're asking people to go into a stranger's office and show them your bits and bobs and your most
Yeah. Yeah.
intimate parts of your body. That's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very difficult to get that. And there's data emerging. It takes about 2.5 years for people to actually take that first step.
Yeah.
And when you take the first step, invariably the person you see doesn't know about it. And you have to see 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 physicians before you finally get that diagnosis over a long period of time.
Yeah. And we know from other conditions as well how that can add to the diagnostic delay when people have that bad first experience, don't they? Like you say,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
you're talking about very personal areas, and if it isn't a great first experience, then who knows how long those people go away and not come back for. So yeah,
Yeah, like most things in life, the first experience dictates the rest of the
yeah,
experiences afterwards.
yeah. And it's really, really fascinating. And one thing I want to ask you is, you did mention earlier, kind of like no rhyme or reason, but
Mhm.
is there any known sort of triggers, or is it? just completely random?
Well, it seems to be a very personal thing. And one thing I'd encourage anyone who's new to it, keep a diary
Hmm.
and work out things for yourself. With certain people will emphasize foods. Certain foods tend to trigger it. Personally, I've never found that, but it seems to be different strokes for different folks. Stress seems to be pretty much universal amongst everyone with HS, and indeed with a lot of
In,
immune-mediated conditions
yeah.
and so on and so forth. But look, stress is a part and parcel of life. You can't avoid it. And a little bit of stress is a good thing. It helps you get out of bed in the morning, but you want to make sure that you can manage stress accordingly such that it doesn't break you.
Yeah.
That's the danger. There are some underlying causes. In about 1 in 3 people, there seems to be a family connection. So it's genetics
Okay.
going on there. Um, Particularly in females, there seems to be a hormonal influence. Quite a few females, it only ever happens with their first pregnancy. Some females go into remission around the time of menopause.
Okay.
In contrast, some females only ever develop it post-menopause. Many females report around the time of their period that it intensifies, it gets worse, and they tend to have more flares around that time. So there's obviously some type of hormonal influence going on in many people. Um, there are some other triggering factors. I think cigarette smoking can be a trigger. Um, a few other bits and pieces like that. So there's no one size fits all here. And over
Yeah.
time, you've got to try and work out what's going on with you and minimize the triggers, the sparks, and so on for yourself.
It's really eye-opening. Of all the conversations we've had on this show, of all the various different stories and conditions we've talked about, this one, it really does feel like the odds are stacked against you getting that help. And then once you get that name, obviously you said there isn't that many options out there. Can you tell us a little bit about the treatment side
Well,
of it?
luckily, Joel, I will add a caveat there. That landscape is evolving rapidly. I was at a recent HS conference and there was lots of data about new medicines that are at late stage development and
Right. Brilliant.
close to the finish line. And if even a fraction of those get through, we'll have more treatment options. Just last year, a new um, treatment option was approved in the US, the UK, in Europe, and in most of the main markets. So now there are 2 approved therapies that
Brilliant.
your consultant can prescribe for you. Overall, about 50 different treatment options are on the table. They tended to just throw everything on the table, and it seems to be a case of trial and error to find what works for you or what combinations of treatments work for you. As well as medicines, I alluded to it earlier on, surgeries um, are a main component of treatment for a lot of people. I've had
Okay.
multiple surgeries, as have many others with HS. Some people thankfully never get to that stage, but the surgery is quite a brutal process. They tend to cut out the affected area and plus some healthy skin in the surrounding area.
Yeah.
And depending on who operates, how deep and wide they operate, and crucially, the aftercare, depending on numerous factors, that can help. And for a lot of people nowadays, it seems to be a combination of surgical approaches and medicinal approaches, depending on what kind of state you're. But again, Joel, just reflect back on what areas of the body are affected. You're talking about I had multiple operations on the backside, and that's quite
Yeah.
difficult afterwards. Going to the toilet, etc., etc. Um, a lot of care is needed afterwards, and you get dressings changed every 2 to 3 days, depending on how deep and wide the cut. This can go on for months, and for quite a lot longer.
And
For
psychologically, that has its
Yeah,
impact
and
as well, doesn't it?
when you're had an operation like that, you're very limited in what you can do afterwards. So it was long periods out of work. Many people are losing work if they're in a type of job where they cannot adjust, and it might be a small operation with just a few employees. They can't afford it. If I'm out every second week or for long periods due to surgery and someone else isn't, or they can get someone else who isn't, well, of course,
Yeah.
that's going to happen. Lots of people who are in what you might call the blue or pink collar jobs, they're losing their livelihoods over this,
Yeah.
because of extended periods out of work. Um, for There were several years where I was out of work because I was going from surgery to surgery. It just seemed to be never ending, one surgery after another. They'd tidy up one area, I'd recover a few months later, and then it would kick off somewhere else and back in and through the whole palaver again. And
Yeah.
that takes a tremendous toll mentally as well, because when you're not working and you're reliant on social welfare, etc., you're not contributing to society. Most people want to do that, want to be able to make a contribution, and you feel like you're a tremendous drain on society, and that does not do your mental health any favors. If you're reliant on others for everything, for practically everything that you do. But again, that's all changing. It's rapidly evolving. New medicines are coming on stream. A lot of the surgical options, they're becoming more refined and so on, and they can do procedures within a dermatologist's office and have you in and out within a couple of hours and have you back in your feet. And it's like going and take an afternoon off work to have a minor procedure done that can keep you going for a while at least. So
Yeah.
it's an exciting landscape right now. For a long time there was very little, but now options are becoming available, and we're often told by consultants that we're a generation or two behind psoriasis. They say that when
Yeah.
someone comes in with psoriasis now, they can offer them a suite of different options.
Yeah.
And that's what we'd aspire to, and that's where we hope it's all going. There's been an explosion in HS research. Almost half of all publications on HS research have been since 2020, would you believe? It's
Wow.
just mushroomed in the past few years.
Yeah. Well, I say I was almost embarrassed that it just not was on my radar for someone. I've been advocating for several years now, and obviously I've lived with psoriasis for decades, and to have no crossover with this condition until the last year, and it piqued my interest. And the more I sort of dug into it, the more I realised how such an unmet need was there. And like you say, you've got all of that. The treatment difficulties. I promise you, there's hope there now for the future, and some of them are quite brutal options. And you've still got that 5 to 10 year delay in actually even getting to that point. That's a real impact on quality of life, doesn't it?
A huge impact. Like most things in life, the sooner you can get to meet the right people, better. But as well as that diagnostic delay, there's then to meet the right people. That's another area that needs to be addressed. There aren't a huge amount of HS specialists, and the ones that
That was
are
actually
there
going to be
are,
my next question. Like,
yeah,
is it
yeah,
dermatology, or are there sort of specialists in that, or is it just an
yeah.
emerging thing?
For a long time, we fell through the cracks of healthcare. I saw numerous specialties down through the years, but now, thankfully, for the past decade or so, we we've found a home within dermatology in
Mhm.
combination with, say, plastic surgeons for the specialty surgery. But by and large, we're managed by dermatologists who will also refer us to other specialties on a per need basis, like the plastic surgeon, like the um, rheumatologist. There are quite a lot of inflammatory arthritic conditions associated
Mhm.
with HS, like psoriatic arthritis. Very high proportion of people with HS have that. Gastrointestinal disorders and a whole host of other associated conditions. It would appear that having HS is opening up the door to a lot of these other conditions, and there's a huge, what they call comorbidity burden,
Mhm.
associated illnesses. So much so that there are some registry based studies that reckon people with HS have a shortened lifespan of about 15 years compared to the general population because of all these other complications and the toll it takes in your body over time. So then that re-emphasizes the importance of getting diagnosed as early as possible and then getting to the right people who can open up the doors to the healthcare system and get you to see the right people.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all that, and I think that comorbidity is a really important one because from my background, obviously slightly different disease, we're behind on that. Recognizing that things like psoriatic arthritis comes with male obesity and cardiovascular issues and this sort of thing, and they're finally getting accepted into like even just getting some of the mental health things in there. I imagine there's probably some crossover there with HS in that
Sure. Yep.
depression, seeing it as a comorbidity rather than just somebody isn't coping well with this condition. It's a comorbidity. So yeah, that is an area that does seem to be picking up speed now, thankfully, but it's taken a
Well,
long time, hasn't it?
I'm glad you brought up depression because anxiety and depression are quite high in the HS population. And as a consequence of that, and it's something that ought to be talked about and mentioned, completed suicide levels within the HS
Wow,
population are higher than the general population.
yeah.
People are at such a, or have been at such a low ebb with it that they've ended up not wanting to go on. And I was there, Joel. I've had a few episodes, and
Yeah.
I'm thankful that I got through it. It's the cliche that you didn't want to die as such, but you just wanted the pain to stop. And it wasn't just the physical pain, but it was the mental pain, the emotional pain, etc., etc. There was times I would have done literally anything to make it all stop. And it's important to mention this because some people are in such dire straits with this that they're going to extreme lengths. And all the other comorbidities that we mentioned, cardiovascular, gastrointestinal, there's some way back from those.
Yeah.
But with suicide, there's no way back.
No.
It's a one-way ticket.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that more than
Mhm.
and I think from everything I've learned in our short time, getting to know you, Barry, and how inspirational you are, I'm also very grateful you are still here talking about this and doing the work you are doing. So yeah, keep up all of that, and thank you so much for sharing all of that. I really do
Mhm.
appreciate it. Um, I wanted to allow like a little bit of time to talk about the organization you sort of co-founded, and that I'm somebody that's sort of a big proponent of patient organizations and the role that they play. Um, I could probably guess why this was founded and the timing and everything based on what you've just shared. But do you want to tell us a little bit more about the founding of HS Ireland?
Well, we started off on Facebook. A few of us got together and got something going. We just wanted to create a safe space. And our numbers are growing and they're growing rapidly. And it's always bittersweet when someone new enters the group. You're devastated that someone has ended up
Yeah.
there. But on the flip side, one comment we always hear is, I am so thankful I found you because I've been alone with this for so long. I haven't been able to talk to anyone. We try and create a safe environment where people can relate to others and share common stories. And it can be a revelation for many to say, well, I've been experiencing this. Has anyone else had it? And people will respond and you go, oh, crikey, others are feeling the same way. I feel somewhat validated. And you can't put a price on that. People who've been dealing with something by and large by themselves for such a long time, being able to meet with others. And HS in particular, it's conducive to online because nowadays when people develop their symptoms, they'll go online because you can search for information privately, anonymously.
Mhm.
And you don't have to ask those questions out loud or go into that GP, which may frighten some people, etc. And within this space, something you mentioned earlier on, we take the information that's shared there very seriously. The quack cures, the snake oils. We, we don't tolerate that type of nonsense.
Yeah.
One of the best things we do within the group is, I find one of the most beneficial things is we point people towards, or there's a specialist in your town or your city.
Mhm.
Ask to be referred to Dr. So and so
Oh,
immediately.
amazing.
They'll look after you. And we're a fantastic resource because people are going in through the traditional routes in healthcare. And it depends on how well up to speed your GP is. And GPs, God love them, they've a hell of a task. You know, they've so many different conditions that they've got to contend with, and they've tried to be up to speed with all the various disciplines. We know where the HS specialty clinics are in Ireland, and we can signpost these to people, or signpost the resources that they need and that they will find most useful. I got it by word of mouth, and the old ways I was going into libraries when I was back in the day and looking up indexes at the
Yeah.
back of books, trying to work my way backwards. Nowadays, with digital technology, you can share this information instantly. And I guess another thing about the patient group is that we have a lot of parents in the group, because you'll have teenagers, children even, who have HS, and it's invariably their mums who come into the group looking for
Mhm.
information. And there's a comment I hold dear to my heart. A mum came into the group a few years ago, and she said, I've learned more here in 10 minutes than I've learned in 3.5 years seeing a specialist. Because we're able to fill the gaps about, she might see that specialist once every 6 months, once every year. We're able to help them with all the other days in between, the day-to-day stuff, the practical
Yeah.
stuff, and share bits and pieces of information. And I think we are filling huge gaps in that regard, helping people with the day-to-day stuff, as well as signposting them towards the specialists and the healthcare resources that do exist. I think also, as a patient organisation, it might be easy for someone in the Department of Health to ignore a letter from Barry McGrath or an email from Barry McGrath. But if Barry McGrath is writing on behalf of 1,300 people, which we almost are now, they have to sit up and take notice, because your voice becomes stronger when you do things together. And this is where patient organisations can make a difference. I recall speaking with a HS specialist in Ireland a few years ago, and I mentioned that HS Ireland, we were going down the route of becoming an official organisation, etc. And they looked at me and smiled and said, the health authorities here will absolutely hate you, because because strength in numbers from that perspective. And they said,
Yeah.
if I can help in any way, please let me know. You know.
It's just like I say, I love that, and I can we get certain themes on this show, and that when you bring people together, like I say, we exist as a peer support community first and foremost before
Mhm.
the interviews and everything, and like there's so much power in that, and I feel like it's such an I don't know, perhaps today it's not underutilized, but it's certainly overlooked, much like I suppose HS itself, in that power of community, collective voice, collective experience, and what you can do with that when it's coordinated properly. And yeah, you're clearly leaving an impression. I'd
Well,
like to know.
Joel,
Sorry.
just one other thing is, pre-COVID, I used to spend a lot of time at weekends going visiting people within the group, meet them for lunch or a cup of coffee
Oh
somewhere.
wow. Yeah.
And those were quite emotional moments for everyone, because for many people, it's their first time meeting in person with someone, and or with someone who has it. And
Yeah.
for I learned as much. I always learn something from these interactions, and it's something I want to start again now post COVID. It's just meeting in person, because just being able to relate to someone, they've a lot of stuff bottled up for many, many years, and being able to share these experiences and physically interact with someone opposite across a table at lunch or something like that, who knows what you're talking about and who understands.
Mhm.
It's an incredible moment, and it's a revelation every time I meet with someone who has HS. I learn as much from them as they from me, because I'm learning about their coping strategies, and they're telling me about things that 1,000 of me at 1,000 typewriters for 1,000 years would
Yeah.
never have come up with.
Yeah.
It's a two-way thing.
It really is. I often talk about when people ask me about advocacy, I say I'm selfish. I do it because it helps me as well.
Yeah, yeah,
There is definitely that element to it, and I can really relate to that. So we now do sort of like community meetups where we do it purely to not even maybe talk about the condition, more that so that someone can go out, and if they're struggling or they have a moment or a wobble, they don't need to make an excuse. They don't need to
exactly. Yep.
justify it. If they have to leave early, it doesn't matter, because they're around other people that are in that exact same boat. And yeah, I feel like that's like the future with what we can do with peer support and what patient organizations can offer, and the fact that you guys are already there, I can't tell you how special that is. I genuinely, like, that's a subject I've been trying to champion for a long while, and you're already there. So I think you deserve to give yourselves a lot of credit for that.
But in terms of something you mentioned earlier on, is there are a lot of patient organisations that are further down the road than we are, and there's, for instance, the psoriasis community in Ireland have been very generous with their time and support in helping us, sharing lessons learned. Oh, don't do it this way. We tried it that way. It didn't work for these reasons. Consider doing it this way. And a lot of other patient organizations, doesn't matter what area they're working in, are very generous with their time, because we're all at different stages of the journey. We all help each other along the way. And I just wish to highlight that
that's really refreshing to hear. I
don't be
appreciate that.
afraid to anyone out there to contact whatever group it is that's in your locality. They are by and large fantastic people, like-minded people, all trying to do good stuff, great work, and they will help if and where they can.
Yeah, that's just, like I say, really refreshing. Thank you for sharing that. It's something that we try to do here in terms of not like reinventing the wheel and collaborating, and especially post COVID, we've got such limited access to funds and people's time and attention these days. Yeah, it's the best use of resources and the way we get to where we all want to get to together. So yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up, Barry. I'm very conscious of time. You've given us so much tonight and shared so much. I feel like I should ask you where people can find that Facebook group, or where they can also find other things that your organization offers. Do you want to give that a quick plug?
Well, a good place to start would be our website, hsireland.ie. That's links to all our social media platforms, our Facebook groups, everything you want to know. There are quite a few. We work closely with a lot of our sister organizations around Europe and internationally. And if you Google HS patient groups, they'll bring you to that. And we'll signpost you to those. If you drop us an email, all the details on our website, we'll happily share those. I mean, again, it's one of the revelations of the digital age, being in contact with people on the other side of the world at the touch of a button, all doing great things. And again, we're all sharing information, what worked, how can we use what they did in the Netherlands, for instance, and incorporate it into the Irish context, and vice versa, and what are they doing in France, and what can we learn, and so on. And thank you, Nietzsche, for popping that link into the chat.
I thought that would appear at some point. She's very on the ball with sharing links, and anyone that's listening to this back on the podcast, we'll put those in the show description for you to find access to Barry's work and organisation. Barry, this has been an absolute. I knew it'd be amazing just from our pre-show chat, but also from getting to know you over the last couple of weeks. And yeah, I'm only sorry we haven't crossed paths earlier, because it feels we now know as well we've definitely been in the same place at the same time on at least one occasion. So hopefully going forward, when we're at the sort of dermatology conferences and everything, we can get together and catch up and see how else we can help each other.
I definitely hope we can, Joel. It'll be a pleasure.
But thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else you want to say, or any sort of final thoughts for somebody that's maybe newly diagnosed, or any other links you haven't shared to resources you'd like?
Sure. A few things, and 1 and 2 are depending on where you are. Get yourself a good medical team that know what they're doing, because that's key. Having a good team helping you and surrounding you is key. Depending on where you are, find a HS patient group, because they can signpost you to a HS specialist, or the medical team can signpost you to a good patient group who will help support you. Find out what works for you. Keep a diary. What triggers for you, what doesn't. The second last thing I want to say is look after your mental health. The first Director General of the World Health Organization came out with the slogan, there is no physical health without mental health. They're inextricably linked. The world's waking up to that. And finally, educate yourself, inform yourself, and advocate for yourself. Speak up for yourself in everything you're doing, whether it be at work, in healthcare, and whatever aspect of life. Speak up for yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. And you've got to take ownership of this.
Amazing. And those 2 minutes right there, Barry, is why so many people speak so highly of you. I'm not just saying this. Genuinely, I've not had so many messages about somebody coming on the show telling me what a great catch it is for us and how great you were going to be at speaking. And so from lots of people on LinkedIn and other sort of advocates and professionals are very much looking forward to this one. And we can all see why. You speak brilliantly. You're doing amazing work. Thank you for everything you're doing for such a such a life-changing but also overlooked condition. And yeah, like I say, if there's any way we can help here, our little community, raise more awareness with you in the future, then please do get in touch. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much, Joel, and thank you for doing this and for all you're doing as well. It's a great show, and you are also helping, you and the guys here are helping so many people also.
It means a lot. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Barry. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye. Guys, thank you so much. I'll just get chat back up. Thank you so much for all the lovely comments through that. Those shows where you guys are so engaged and invested in it really do make a difference. So thank you for everybody that commented through that. I shared as much as I could. Obviously, I am trying to be an interviewer first and foremost, and give our guests the attention they deserve. But so many lovely comments. Thank you for the people as well that shared things, personal experiences in chat. I tried to get as many in there as possible. If you'd like to say any sort of final thoughts, chat is now back on screen across all the platforms we're streaming on. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. So we're looking to add more to that, by the way, guys. But just a usual reminder that YouTube is our primary platform. That's where you see most of the chatters here tonight. But yeah, if anyone wants any sort of final words, any messages for Barry, as I'm sure they will see this. Barry is often watching us over on LinkedIn, so I know that he definitely sees the LinkedIn messages, but I will also share some bits on screen. Like I say, the chat is on screen now for you to share any final messages to Barry. But what an amazing advocate, absolute inspiration to people like myself. Yeah, we were talking before I went live to find out that we were at EADV at the same time. We've probably been at other conferences at the same time, so hopefully we can do more together in the future. And again, I want to give a big shout out to Dr. Eleanor Chatburn. For those who will know, she joined us quite brilliantly at the end of our World Psoriasis Day 8-hour live stream, and after we had quite a few technical issues, she actually agreed to join early, which meant we had a longer conversation with her, and she was amazing, left a big impression on a lot of you. You can find that video if you're watching us over on YouTube. If you're not, just head over to the YouTube channel and search. You might find on YouTube, she's grown in popularity, quite rightly so, because she speaks brilliantly, but you might find, just searching for Dr. Eleanor Chatburn, you might find our video. Look for a purple and orange thumbnail. But she was the one who made me aware of HS, and I'd seen some prominent people, some of which I've seen in chat today over on LinkedIn. So if you're still watching at this point, thank you for your support and for taking time to listen. So I've seen people sharing it in the sort of pharma community, and it comes up on my feed in LinkedIn. But from like a lived experience, patient experience kind of point of view, I was totally, it was totally off my radar. So a big shout out to Dr. Eleanor Chatburn for making us aware of that issue, of that condition, and how often overlooked it is. And hopefully by tonight, by Barry coming on and talking, we've been able to raise a bit more awareness of it. And, maybe it rings a few bells with people, or maybe the medical community, which is growing here, guys. Just to let you know, we've got a couple of guests coming up in the next couple of weeks. This is always where my face goes really white, because this website refuses to use a dark mode, which is not great for my eyes. But in the next couple of weeks, we have got Professor Elise Pryor joining us, who will be talking about their experience with AS and as a researcher. We've also got Martin Stevens joining us, who's a research fellow at the Aberdeen Centre for Arthritis and Musculoskeletal Health at University of Aberdeen. These people are now coming forward. We've also got, who you can see in chat, Fez is joining us. Really looking forward to that. Fez, another amazing advocate who I think I first came across that gentleman when we were both nominated for WeGo Awards, I believe. That feels like a long while ago now, Fez, doesn't it? So we got lots of sorry, I'm gonna have to go back to his website again. And we're also gonna keep the lived experience going. We've got a chap, Craig, coming on talking about living with psoriatic arthritis. So we're gonna keep those lived experiences coming, guys. But the fact is, we have now arrived at a point on this show where people are sort of not waking up wrong, because you've got to get on people's radar to have those conversations in the first place. But obviously we're slogged away at this for a while now, and we're now at a point where we can have those conversations from all angles. It's not just people coming on and talking about lived experiences, people coming on talking about the organizations they started, doctors coming on, as you saw with Professor Augustine and Dr. Eleanor Chatburn. You know, we've got researchers. We've had Dr. Rachel Sommer in the past from Hamburg. We're also, as I say, we've got a researcher coming on from University of Aberdeen. Professor Elise Pryor, brilliant. You know, wonderful woman of doing always does great sort of post awareness stuff over on Twitter and X. Had the pleasure of meeting her very briefly at EULA last year. And all of a sudden this stuff was coming together, but none of it would have happened without you guys turning up week in, week out and showing that there was an audience for it. And sometimes that doesn't always happen on the live stream. You know, we'll have some videos where the live stream maybe gets a couple hundred views on Twitter and a couple hundred views on LinkedIn and maybe only 50 views on YouTube or whatever. And then it blows up, or the podcast comes out a couple of months down the line and that blows up. You know, we have reached people in over 60, 70 countries with the podcast alone. We've had 60,000 views of our interviews on YouTube, on our YouTube, our little tiny zero interest, zero subscriber. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button right now. It does help. I know everyone says it generally does help, but how is this bald guy in Norfolk talking about how his joints hurt and his skin's got rashes, and started sharing that on the internet all those years ago, have now got to a point where we've got 60,000 people who have watched that on YouTube alone. It doesn't include LinkedIn, it doesn't include Twitter and X, it doesn't include Facebook. But like I say, guys, it's you guys doing that, showing these people, showing key opinion leaders, showing the pharma industry, showing medical professionals that there is an interest, there is a need, and that we are meeting patients where we are with these conversations, with this peer support on a Sunday night when people like me are dreading what tomorrow holds, dreading about how long it's going to take me to get up and ready and how late I'm going to be for work and what my output's going to be like, and can I have fun and can I do the things I want to do with my son as a parent. All these sort of conversations you have with yourself when you're living with these long-term health conditions. And on a Sunday night, we are showing that there is a need for that, and people are waking up to it and asking to come on to be part of that. And that feels really bloody special. I can't think of a more eloquent way of putting it. And on that, guys, I'm going to leave you to the rest of your evening. Please do give us a like, subscribe, follow wherever it is that you're watching. Please let us know where you're watching from in chat. I love reading those messages. And until next time, guys, I will see you next week, next Sunday, or I will see you on Twitter, twitch.tv/Joel versus arthritis, if not before. Until next time, guys, thank you so much. This is absolute pleasure. It's a highlight of my week. Speak soon. Bye-bye.